une bonne soirée samedi soir pour vous?
Oui.
Oui. Ah oui, c'était amusant.
Votre raisonnement, M. Carney, derrière Mark Carney à la culture non officielle, c'est quoi? Pourquoi M. Miller à la culture?
Oui, M. Miller, il est très capable, beaucoup d'expérience, mais c'est une équipe en ce qui concerne la culture, les langues officielles, les enjeux qui concernent le Québec et la langue française à travers le Canada.
Et sur le pipeline, c'est terminé, les départs, il y en aura d'autres, avez-vous encore des gens à convaincre au sein de votre caucus sur l'accord avec l'Alberta?
Oui, tout d'abord, il faut reconnaître que l'accord, le protocole d'accord, c'est seulement un protocole d'accord, mais le protocole d'accord avec l'Alberta concerne les centres de données de l'intelligence artificielle, des connexions entre l'Alberta et la Colombie-Britannique en ce qui concerne l'électricité nette de la Colombie-Britannique. Et oui, un pipeline, mais il faut avoir en même temps un grand investissement dans le stockage de carbone. C'est une grande bargain, les deux, entre les deux. Et ça crée la possibilité d'avoir des sources d'énergie en ouest du Canada, plus diverses, plus propres, et un pays, un Canada, plus indépendant. Plus indépendant des États-Unis.
I know you just started your role, but how much is a priority of getting some online harms legislation before Parliament?
Yeah, and it starts, Stephanie. I mean, it is a priority for those people who are being victimized by it. But there's a fine balance that we have to achieve with freedom of expression, notably, but I think Canadians want us to act. But it's very much something I'm looking at, and I'll need the next few days and weeks to center myself and figure out how we move forward.
Well, the government's facing pushback right now for signing this MOU on the pipeline without consulting with Indigenous leaders. Based on your past experience and your portfolios, how can the government put this back on track? What advice would you have?
Well, right now, I mean, the work starts now. Should have started yesterday. We need to engage with Indigenous communities in a respectful, thoughtful way. Be willing to step outside the box, think outside the box, and actually listen to some of the demands that a number of communities have been making for years and listen to them. There are communities that have very, very strong views on that. Getting to yes is a difficult and complex process, but it can't be done from a desktop. It has to actually be done face-to-face in a respectful way with the people responsible in charge showing a personal commitment to making sure they are improving lives of communities and getting benefits into communities if and when a pipeline is to be approved.
En français, M. Miller, en français là-dessus, est-ce qu'on peut vous entendre? Qu'est-ce que M. Carney a besoin de dire aux Premières Nations aujourd'hui pour les convaincre?
Ben, ça commence maintenant et ça aurait dû commencer bien avant, c'est sûr, dans un monde idéal, mais c'est sûr que ça commence maintenant. Le travail va être pas facile. Il y a beaucoup de communautés qui ont déjà des points de vue très arrêtés sur l'enjeu, sur la pipeline, sur la côte ouest. Il faut les écouter, il faut s'asseoir avec eux de façon respectueuse, personnelle, montrer qu'on est prêt à faire des changements qui sont respectueux puis reflètent les besoins des communautés.
Ça a commencé assez tôt? C'est ce que ça veut dire? Vous avez fait une erreur en consultant pas plus vite?
Ce ne sera pas facile, mais le travail difficile commence maintenant.
Well, I missed the top of it, so I just want to understand what kind of a challenge do you foresee for the government in trying to get that MOU passed with any consent from any Indigenous
group out west?
Again,
they got to sit down and start working now. If everyone thought Thursday was difficult, that was probably the easiest day in the life of that pipeline.
The Conservatives are calling the removal of religious
Vous avez dit
exemption.
que vous n'étiez pas sûr qu'il y avait un déclin du français. Pouvez-vous clarifier votre pensée là-dessus? Croyez-vous qu'il y a un déclin du français au Québec et comment vous qualifiez ce déclin?
Bien, ce que j'ai dit, Hélène, sans équivoque, c'est que le français est fragilisé partout en Amérique du Nord. Il y a un déclin, à certains égards, au Québec, toujours menacé. Ce que je déplore dans cette discussion, c'est la politisation de l'enjeu. Moi, j'ai à cœur, de façon professionnelle et personnelle, la pérennité du français. J'ai élevé mes enfants en français. J'ai ça à cœur. Je veux absolument que la langue commune au Québec soit le français. Ceci étant dit, c'est un enjeu très complexe. Quand on dit que le français est en déclin, parfois, oublie tout ce qui a été accompli avec la loi 101, l'accord Canada-Québec qui a donné la mainmise au Québec sur l'immigration, surtout l'immigration francophone. Donc, il y a plusieurs complexités à l'enjeu. Je veux quand même le dépolitiser parce que...
Qu'est-ce que vous voulez dire par politiser?
Bien, je pense que c'est diffusé pour des raisons identitaires. Puis, je pense que, comme Québécois, je suis assez tanné de ce débat qui est généralement identitaire.
Mais la langue n'était pas identitaire?
Bien, ça l'est, absolument, mais c'est aussi le reflet de notre société, notre vivre ensemble, puis l'importance d'avoir une langue commune que j'ai à cœur et dont je vais m'assurer que le fédéral a son rôle à faire, à aider le Québec, qui a la juridiction primaire sur l'enjeu au Québec, mais aussi en dehors du Québec, parce que le français, c'est pas une langue qui est limitée uniquement.
Avez-vous hésité à joindre le cabinet?
What do you make of the reports that your government is making an agreement with the Bloc to remove religious exemptions from the hate speech laws to pass Bill C-9? You're the chair of the Justice Committee.
Right.
Is that happening?
Well, I have to question myself. Look, I'm a person of faith. I'm Christian. I have very, very deep beliefs. The reality is I don't think people should be using the Bible, the Quran, or the Torah to escape from committing a hate crime or claim that what would otherwise be a hate crime is done in the name of a religious text. You can look at the religious texts yourself and see what they mean, but the reality is that there is an exception in the criminal code that are making people hesitate. And when the conservatives come out and pretend that they are defending freedom of expression, they are defending people like Adel Shakari.
Has there been enough study
Contradictoire parce que justement, ils ont beaucoup parlé, les conservateurs, sur la haine envers les Juifs pendant les 2 dernières années, suivant ce qui s'est passé à Gaza. Est-ce qu'il n'y a pas une contradiction conservatrice ici?
Absolument. Je l'ai dit en anglais, mais chaque fois que les conservateurs défendent ce point de vue, ils sont en train de défendre les propos haineux de gens comme Adel Shakari, ce qui est inacceptable. Je ne pense pas qu'on devrait utiliser la Bible, la Torah et le Coran pour autant pour défendre, pour commettre un crime haineux. C'est ma perspective. Là, il reste à voir ce que le comité sur la justice va faire.
Sentez-vous que les libéraux sont ouverts à ce changement?
Je pense oui.
Has there been enough study on that question though, like removing this religious exemption from the criminal code?
Not entirely sure. I think it's been discussed for years. Certainly, the Bloc Québécois has showed some leadership in that area. I think it's intellectually contradictory. I think if you are a person of faith, it is contradictory to suggest that you can commit a hate crime in the name of a religious text, whether it's the Quran, the Torah.
But Christian Muslim stakeholders are already saying this would be an attack on freedom of religion. So I mean, how could the government be on side with this, hearing some of the concerns already voiced from stakeholders?
I would respectfully disagree, and I think if you talk to people of faith and even religious leaders, they would see that this is really something that makes sense, and that nobody actually should be committing.
Well, it has to go. I'm sorry.
Let me finish my thought, but nobody should be committing a hate crime in the name of a religious text.
Monsieur Miller, sachant que les reculs...
Quand vous dites le français est en recul à
Une chance
certains
que tu
égards...
grelottes moins qu'hier, là, parce que je te voyais grelotter.
Ah oui, je grelottais, il faisait fret. Quand vous dites le français est en recul à certains égards, à quels égards il est en recul? Juste pour clarifier ce que vous venez de dire.
Langue parlée à la maison, notamment. De façon statistique aussi au travail. Il faut faire un effort supplémentaire. Je pense que ça prend l'implication du fédéral, que ce soit au Québec ou ailleurs au Canada, surtout ailleurs au Canada. Dans mon dossier, vous avez vu, j'avais doublé l'immigration francophone en dehors du Québec. C'est immensément important pour notre projet de société qu'est le Canada. Mais c'est clair que...
pas recul sur tous les indicateurs, c'est ça que vous dites?
Vous pouvez consulter les indicateurs vous-même. Ce que je refuse, c'est ce catéchisme que veulent certains partis politiques pour dire que le français est en recul total, parce que la réalité dans tout ça, c'est qu'il y a des bonnes nouvelles, notamment les nouvelles depuis plusieurs décennies, grâce à la loi 101, grâce à l'entente Canada-Québec qui a donné la mainmise à l'immigration francophone au Québec, où ça devrait l'être. Je pense qu'il y a des bonnes nouvelles, mais le français, puis je vais le répéter, immensément fragile en Amérique du Nord, puis il faut le protéger.
Sur votre nomination, M. Miller, sur votre
There might be some concerns in English Canada. We're looking at the polls that a separatist government might be elected in Quebec, and are you the guy to carry the federal flag for us?
Well, of course, I'll always be happy to carry the federal flag, and I think that's part of the role of the Quebec Lieutenant is to communicate well with Quebecers, but most importantly to get the interest of Quebec relayed properly in Ottawa. So I'm looking forward to play that role.
I hear that there's a lot of...
À quoi ça pourrait ressembler concrètement? Quelle serait votre stratégie par rapport à ça?
Ben, par rapport à?
Par rapport à la souveraineté.
Pour l'instant, moi, ce sur quoi je me concentre, c'est de livrer pour les Québécois des bons emplois l'économie développée. Par exemple, le secteur de la défense au Québec, les minéraux critiques, s'assurer que la classe moyenne ait un bon pouvoir d'achat, c'est ce qu'on a fait dans le dernier budget. C'est vraiment ça sur quoi je me concentre. Puis comme lieutenant, moi je suis dans la région de Québec, c'est que je veux qu'on soit très visible dans les régions du Québec, entre autres au Saguenay, dans l'Est et certainement à Québec.
Vous voyez la réponse de votre collègue à l'immigration un peu sèche à Québec, ceux qui demandent plus d'argent pour l'accueil des réfugiés. Est-ce que c'est le genre de truc où le lieutenant aurait peut-être une petite intervention à faire pour mieux connecter les gens?
Bien, je pense que la connexion, déjà, il y a quand même 1,5 milliard qui est là pour l'accueil des nouveaux arrivants. Il y a des discussions aussi qui ont cours avec Québec sur ce sujet-là. Puis il y a déjà une entente qui a été signée il y a à peu près 1 an sur ce sujet-là. Mais oui, ça va me faire plaisir. Donnez-moi un peu de temps. Ça fait à peu près 24 heures, même pas 24 heures que je suis en place.
Sur les Autochtones, juste une question. Est-ce que vous avez l'impression que M. Carney respecte les peuples autochtones, surtout en lien avec l'annonce et l'entente qu'il a signée avec l'Alberta la semaine dernière?
C'est pas un projet à proprement parler. Puis dans l'entente, il est prévu qu'il faut consulter les peuples autochtones. C'est avec ça ne change pas. Puis c'est une obligation constitutionnelle laquelle on entend respecter, c'est certain.
Question technique. Là, hier, vous avez été assermenté comme tel, mais est-ce qu'un lieutenant, c'est un poste de ministre pour lequel on a besoin d'être assermenté? On se posait une question, c'est vraiment technique. Là.
Vous référez au conseil privé peut-être sur cette question-là, mais
je me demandais si
je pense qu'ils ont peut-être la réponse.
Avez-vous une relation avec le gouvernement Legault, avec la CAQ? Comment sont les relations?
Les relations en ce qui me concerne maintenant, elles sont très bonnes. Ça n'a pas toujours été... Des fois, tu sais, c'est sûr qu'en politique, on ne peut pas être d'accord sur tout, mais il y a beaucoup d'axes sur lesquels on est très bien aligné avec le gouvernement du Québec, entre autres les priorités économiques qu'a énoncées M. Legault. Puis moi, par exemple, dans la région de Québec, je travaille très étroitement avec Bernard Drainville, entre autres en soutien au chantier Davy. C'est que je pense qu'il y a matière à bien travailler puis à signer des bonnes ententes pour le Québec.
Exactly. Quickly on the pipelines. I understand Quebecers are generally supportive of the approach through the MOU about pipeline development with the approach on climate change. In other words, Quebecers will be the government's allies trying to see that forward. Is that a fair assessment, in your view?
Well, I can't speak, it's hard to speak for 9 million Quebecers. I'll just say that based on what I've heard from my constituents, there's a strong understanding that the reality has changed over the last few months and years, and that we need to be to focus on our energetic sovereignty as well, while fighting climate change, and that we need to have a realist and pragmatic approach. And that's, you know, I've heard pretty supportive comments from constituents. So,
thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Yes.
I never can.
What do you think about having parks?
I think it's great. I'm really excited about having parks and nature as part of my file. It's something that I care about deeply. When I started, even before I was elected, that was something that I worked on a lot, is about parks and protecting green spaces. And now I get to play a direct role, so I'm really excited.
I want to know, is there an upcoming nature strategy?
Yeah.
What is it?
Well, you will have to wait to see what the nature strategy will be, but we are working on it right now.
I know. Yes. But what is your expectation of how quickly Alberta will get to that $130 per ton industrial carbon tax? I know next year is when the negotiations are set to conclude. That will spell that timeline out. But how quickly do you expect before Alberta hits that minimum price?
So on that piece, that's something that we're going to have to negotiate. And it's not just about the credit price, but it's also about the other financial mechanisms.
But if the government is selling this as a win, like how soon, or what is the government's position of how soon Alberta should hit that? Because if Daniel Smith comes and says, I won't be able to get there to 2035, is that acceptable?
I don't want to negotiate outside of the room on what we're going to be doing when it comes to the industrial carbon price. I think it's really important if we take this moment to say, you know, the Alberta government has now agreed that they need to work with us on an effective industrial carbon price.
We have no timeline, and I'm trying to understand what is the minister's position.
You had mentioned that there's an emissions reductions plan coming by the end of the year. What were you talking about?
Oh, a progress report. So we must, by the end of the year, like we have an emissions reductions plan, and by the end of 2025, we need to put out a report that shows our progress on it. So you will be seeing that coming out soon.
And is that going to change
it all?
Minister, how is the government's deal? Yes, I don't know. Contrary to the government's contract?
Well, you would have to refer probably to the Minister of Industry for that specificity. I can't recall on the top of my head, but we want to support the workers. We want to support the steel industry. We need a strong steel industry in the country. We have a lot of things to do, but in discussion with the company, we've offered all the support that we can to make sure they can pivot and make sure they can find new markets and also use new technology. But obviously now
But did you anticipate that in doing so they would lose 1,000 of their workers?
One thing that is clear is that in the shift of technology, when you go to electric furnace, it's a different process in terms of steel making. But what I can say is that now priority number one is to support the worker at this time, because that's priority number one.
Can I ask you about the MOU? And the MOU commits the federal government and the Alberta government to constructing and financing pathways. What budget have you projected for the federal government portion of eventually financing pathways?
Well, there is a number of tax credit already included in the budget in the 2025.
Is that the financing that it talks about?
Well, I mean,
I wasn't clear on that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of tax credit under the 2025 budget, but also 2024, which would cover part of the project. So there's. That's how you would provide support for this project, is under the tax credit that exist not only for that project but for the other. There's a tax credit for carbon capture and sequestration, which is already in the budget. So that would be available to them, but also other proponents who may want to do carbon capture in the country.
So just to be very clear, then, it doesn't. You are not at this point projecting that you would have to provide additional either loans, loan guarantees, grants, any other contributions?
For the time being, like I said, for the time being, what we have is what's in the budget in terms of tax credit. For the time being, yes. Bonjour tout le monde.
Well, look, this is all part of our ambition to continue to grow export markets, build and strengthen business ties, and have, generally speaking, more openness and more ability to deal with the rest of the world.
How are you using landing rights and these airline deals in bargaining on the table when you're entering negotiations with India, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, other places? How's it a bargaining chip?
Well, we always want to, of course, open doors and opportunities for Canadian airlines and air transporters that want to develop overseas markets. That is obviously very important. I think, you've seen Air Transat, for example, open new routes to Africa, Air Canada be very active in Asia, so that will continue to be important. And there's obviously a quid pro quo involved, and having foreign airlines serve Canada and give consumers more choice is also a good thing.
How is this different than the past? Like, what barriers were there that this wasn't happening before?
Well, I don't know that it wasn't happening. I just think that there is renewed and increased interest and perhaps attention on this issue.
Le départ de M. Guilbeault, est-ce que ça va vous faire mal? Comment vous voyez ça?
La perte d'un collègue du Conseil des ministres n'est jamais quelque chose de très reluisant, mais je suis évidemment très content de l'arrivée de mon ami Marc Miller au cabinet. Il va faire un excellent travail et on va continuer de remplir et réaliser nos engagements électoraux et de livrer sur les emplois et sur l'ambition du Québec, du Canada.
Vous entendre sur le télétravail, donc en 2027, retour à 5 jours. Quel impact ça va avoir sur l'attraction de la fonction publique dans votre région?
Ben, je me remets aux responsables de ce dossier-là qui, évidemment, n'ont pas fait d'annonce encore. Et,
vous avez un paquet de fonctionnaires dans votre comté, donc...
Tout à fait. Ben, je l'ai dit hier, je répète aujourd'hui, je pense que ceux qui examinent cet enjeu au niveau de la fonction publique observent une tendance lourde dans les autres gouvernements, les municipalités, les provinces, ainsi que dans les grands employeurs, les banques et ainsi de suite. Donc, j'attends comme vous le fruit de leur travail.
I'm just going to make that back up in English, just on the return to work and what you're hearing from your constituents, many of whom must be in public service, about this idea of 5 days.
Yes, well, I think there are people in the public service who are looking at this issue. They will have observed, as all of us have observed, that there is a trend towards return to the office, whether that be in the private sector or in other levels of government, in municipalities, the City of Ottawa, the province of Ontario, and so on. So I'll wait till, like you, I'll wait for them to make their observations known.
How long do you expect to be able to stretch out the time right now, between now and the next time you have to face a government confidence vote in the House?
Well, anything budgetary could be a confidence vote.
Right, and so how far out do you see that going? Like, you could get one tomorrow, I know, but I mean...
Well, today we will be debating the budget bill, so obviously the budget bill is an important part of our budget package. Well, those things I don't get to decide, unfortunately. All members of the House get to decide.
How long until you have how long are you going to continue to hold two portfolios?
That's up to the Prime Minister, and I'm happy to serve in any capacity that I can.
Take a different approach to the Bloc Québécois the next time you're facing a vote.
What kind of different approach?
Well, none of them supported they didn't support your budget. Is there anything different you've learned or lessons learned about how to try to get votes?
I think that would be a question better asked of them. I note, for example, that they published a list of non-negotiable demands that they haven't mentioned since the budget.
Are you worried that Elizabeth May's bailed on you?
Again, Parliament is it's like Forrest Gump said, it's like a box of chocolates.
Monsieur MacKinnon, j'ai raté le début. On vous a peut-être posé la question sur l'article 319 sur l'exemption religieuse pour le discours haineux. Les conservateurs sont très forts là-dessus hier. Y a-t-il une ouverture de la part de votre gouvernement à considérer ça?
Ça, c'est une question pour le ministre.
How soon do you hope to pass C9 with this new deal between the Liberals and the Bloc?
That's a question for the minister.
Mr. Robertson, can you explain why your office is spending 56% less on housing, according to the Parliamentary Budget Office?
Yeah, happy to answer to that. Well, I've just been in Cabinet for the morning, so I don't have the details of the PBO report. I'll be getting into those this afternoon, but thankful to have them look at affordable housing in Canada. I would say, first and foremost, Build Canada Homes is just launching here. We just opened the portal. We have just the initial capitalization in the budget of $13 billion. We also have $51 billion of housing-enabling infrastructure, so combined a significant investment that's designed to attract private investment in housing. The way we've built affordable housing for the last 3 decades is not enough. It's not being built fast enough. There's not enough capital coming to invest in affordable housing, so we're looking at crowding in investment from other levels of government and private sector and scaling up the work for affordable housing. This is just the beginning with Build Canada Homes. We will be scaling that work, bringing the capital to the table so we can build on affordable housing at an unprecedented scale. Going to meet right now with counterparts from Quebec. We want to make sure we're working with the provinces and the cities in particular to deliver the housing, and lots of work ahead of us. This is just the very beginning.
The report found that it's set to build far less affordable housing than initially pitched. What message does that send to Canadians who are still trying to find affordable housing? Is this not a priority for this government?
Affordable housing is a huge priority for this government.
Why are you spending less?
Build Canada Homes, this is the very beginning. This is the first stage of the investment in affordable housing and creating a one-stop shop. We've just opened the portal to invite proposals. We want the private sector to partner with us. And this is about scaling up that work. Over this year, we're going to see in 2026 significant investment in the housing enabling infrastructure. So the water, the sewer, the roads, the transit, the community investments that we need to unlock tens of thousands of units of housing across the country as well that the private sector can build. So it's a combination of investing in housing and in the community infrastructure that supports housing.
The PBO says it's only going to build 26,000 homes. Do you agree with that assessment that the programs you build are only going to build 26,000?
Well, I've got to go into detail, look at their numbers, but I think that's just based on the raw number. It's not based on attracting a lot of investment from provinces, from the private sector, and making sure that we're modernizing the industry and delivering more homes per dollar. That's about making sure we're doing factory-built housing that's cheaper, we can build faster, we can get more value for Canadians' dollars.
So you think you got it wrong?
No, I think this is just the beginning, and we're going to deliver a ton of affordable housing, and we're going to leverage a lot of investment from across Canada to get that done.
When you say you're
Thank you
leveraging
all.
investment, does that mean, though, that you're going to cut government grants on housing? And you're going to cut that spending, that the PBO seems to be basing their numbers on?
In the budget, apparently, there's 56% less spending on housing. Why is your government not spending nearly as much on housing? That's according to the PBO level.
Yes.
Who I know you love.
Well, I respect their work. It's just what I'd like is to sometimes you need a bit of nuance. In a sense, what they're saying is in 28, 29, but, without getting technical, is obviously there's a number of decisions that will have to be taken from now to 28, 29. What we presented to Canadians is I would say an historical investment in infrastructure already. I mean, it compares to the benchmark for that, when I say generational historical, is Germany. I mean, Germany is seen as the G7 country which has presented the most ambitious plan. If you look at that, it's 500 billion euros over 12 years. If you compare that to Canada, it would be 800 billion Canadian. We're proposing in the budget $450 billion over 5 years. So it's equivalent or even at par or more than what Germany is doing, which is the largest economy in Europe. So that's how I'm saying we've made significant investment in housing and infrastructure. Build Canada Home is going to do a lot of that work. So that's why when I've seen the report, but I'm saying what I don't understand is why we would prejudge 28, 29. Let's work with what we have today. We have Build Canada Homes. We have a number of initiatives to increase the stock of housing. Why? Because this is key to affordability. So we're doing the work now, and we'll take the decisions that are going to be needed as we go forward. But you would appreciate you don't take decisions for 29 in 25. You work with what you have today, and we have done historical investment in the housing.
You're confident it will be more?
Well, listen, I'm just saying you have Budget 2025, which is already historical by the G7 standard, not Canada. Just look at the G7. This is historical in terms of how much you're putting in housing to support the housing stock in Canada. What I'm saying is that we have what we need now, but obviously there'll be a budget in 26, there'll be a budget in 27, there'll be a budget in 28, there'll be a budget in 29. But what I'm saying today is that we have what we need in order to increase the stock of housing in the country, which is a key affordability measure. Merci, tout le monde. Merci.
I wanted to ask about the headline carbon price. Danielle Smith seemed to be saying that her understanding is that for Alberta, at least, it won't go up to 170 now after the MOU. Can you tell us what's going on with that?
So I'll step back and say what I think Canadians, what I'd like them to understand about the MOU is this is a collective response to the reality we find ourselves in. We're finding ourselves in a hinge moment. Our economy is under attack. We need to respond to that. We need to put cards into our hands so that we can fight against this unjust and unfair trade war. Our energy and natural resources are some of our best cards. What this MOU does is it creates agreement between the federal government and Alberta on a path forward around how to consider the development of energy infrastructure that puts cards in our hands. At the same time, it creates clarity around an industrial carbon price going forward that the province of Alberta agrees to, that the federal government agrees to, which creates certainty for industry to invest in this industry. It creates clarity around methane abatement, something that's really important to getting to net zero. It creates agreement on developing the world's largest carbon capture and storage facility, something that will create technology and jobs that we can export all over the world. It creates agreement on interties where we can trade more low-carbon energy between the different provinces. It creates agreement on how we build nuclear, a non-carbon emitting generating source, into the grids in Western Canada. These are wins for Canada. We're at the beginning of the conversation. I was out in British Columbia speaking with Premier Eby about how British Columbia will be a part of these discussions. I'll be visiting the AFN later this week to talk about that. We fully understand that British Columbia and affected Indigenous peoples are a core part of any discussions going forward. And I think this is a real win for Canada. This is an opportunity for us to work together to meet the moment. Canadians expect us to deal with this unjust and unfair trade war. We're dealing with it.
So just on the question of certainty and the carbon price going up to 170.
So what the MOU says is the minimum effective carbon price going forward will be no less than $130. What the MOU says is between now and April of next year, the Alberta government and the federal government will work to look at how that carbon price is laid out and gives clarity over time so that we get to net zero in 2050. and the technology to be deployed to get there, things like the Pathways project, make economic sense.
So the headline price, though, going to 170, is that now potentially not going to 170 for Alberta alone? And where does that leave the other provinces who are on that schedule?
The agreement is each province has their own carbon markets. What each province needs to do is show how they will get to net zero. If a province has a way to do it, the federal government will get out of the way and let them do that. In this case, Alberta and the federal government are going to work on a structure using that minimum $130 carbon price through 2050, how we get to net zero. That's the goal.
Steph, is it feasible to have a pipeline and keep the tanker ban in place, in your estimation?
So the proponent, Alberta, will come when they are ready. They have not chosen a route. We don't know what that route is yet. What we've said is when the proponent comes, they will come and they need to bring along the affected jurisdiction. If it's British Columbia, that's British Columbia. And they need to bring along the affected First Nations. When the proponent does that, we'll deal with whatever we need to deal with at that time. It's premature to talk.
Are you trying to negotiate any kind of MOU with Quebec on Energy East or any of the other projects?
We have ongoing discussions with the province of Quebec about projects that are of interest to them. Right now, I'm not aware of any discussions around an MOU with Quebec.
The AFN this morning, sir, I believe, moved a motion that called for the Alberta-Canada MOU to be withdrawn and that they reaffirmed the need for a tanker ban. We just have to ask you, what do you think of that and what's your reaction, please?
I think Canadians expect us to deal with this hinge moment. We need to respond. Our economy is under attack. Our best cards, none of us want to be in a situation where we are told we have no cards. We have great cards in our energy and natural resources. We need to play them effectively. We need to work together. Now is not the time to split apart. Now is the time to come together and figure out how we can develop our energy and our natural resources in partnership with affected jurisdictions and in partnership with Indigenous peoples, and that's what we're going to do. Canadians expect us as elected people, elected officials, to roll up our sleeves and have the hard conversations to get to a place where we can defend this country, and that's what we're going to do.
All right, we have time for one more.
Can you be clear, because there's been different language on this when different people are speaking. Do you think the BC government needs to support a pipeline in order for it to go forward? Is that a requirement?
What we have said is that we will sit down with a proponent, in this case Alberta, with the affected jurisdiction. We will work to see what is possible. I had a very productive discussion with Premier Eby. They will be a part of those discussions as the proponent comes forward. The proponent needs to do a lot of work before they can have a fulsome discussion with the province of Alberta or any affected First Nations. They have to pick a route. They haven't done that yet. That's work that's ongoing. But what we have said is we will be at the table, we will be working with Alberta, we will be working with British Columbia, and we will make sure Indigenous peoples are a part of any discussions with the proponent. Again, there is no project yet. So we can't consult on a project when there's no project. What I will assure you is the federal government will make sure Indigenous peoples' rights to consultation are upheld. That's a core part of the MOU.
Do you believe there will be a project?
It is not my job to do that. The job is for proponents to bring projects forward. It's not my job to bring projects forward.
Do you expect one?
The government of Alberta has said they want to be a proponent for this project.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay,
The
thank you.
emissions cap, just a question on that if you have a second. Sorry.
Mr. Anandasangaree, the officials were saying today that it's around 1%, less than 1% fentanyl going to the U.S. Have you conveyed that to your American counterparts, trying to drive home the point that it's not Canadian fentanyl going into the U.S.?
We've always maintained that, and in every conversation I've had, we've highlighted that the surge of fentanyl impacts all in North America. the source is not each other. The source is from external countries, external regions. So fentanyl is not going certainly from Canada to the U.S.
So the most recent report today about the latest seizure, do you plan to relay that information specifically to your American counterparts?
We have very good conversations, and we have ongoing dialogue, and every opportunity we have, we convey that. Last week, as you know, both Attorney General Bondi as well as Undersecretary of Law, who is with DHS, were in Canada. We had a number of conversations, number of pull-asides, and also bilateral. So again, we emphasize that the fentanyl crisis is stemming from overseas and not Canada to the U.S.
Alberta gun buyback? There's a CBSA officer who says that your department horribly mistreated, he was horribly mistreated by the CBSA when all of this happened, when India was defaming him. What do you have to say for that?
I don't know the particular case that you're referencing, but I can look into it and get back to you.
Alberta gun buyback, sir, is there a next step for you if Ms. Smith's government does not engage or walks away from any buyback?
We will continue to work with all the provinces and territories as well as law enforcement to ensure that the compensation program is implemented in an equitable way. For any jurisdictions that are preventing the compensation program to move forward, they're really hurting their own citizens. As you're aware, there are funds available as part of the program for individual firearms owners who have prohibited weapons from getting compensation. So if they're disallowing their citizens to attain that compensation, they're really hurting their own people.
When are things going to move forward? It was supposed to start this fall, and we still don't know the results of the pilot. And when are things supposed to move forward?
We'll have a better sense of timelines, and certainly we'll be sharing that with you as soon as we can.
Is it going to start this year, before the end of the year, or like what's?
As I indicated last time, we have the pilot's been completed in Cape Breton. We have a number of things that we learned from the pilot program. We are now equipping ourselves to expand it across Canada, and I would say we will be doing so within weeks.
How many provinces or territories at this point do you think this can work in, given that Alberta and Saskatchewan now have legislation that could put obstacles at?
That will be the last question, if you don't mind. Thank you.
This is a Canada-wide program, so we expect it to be rolled out Canada-wide. There are mechanisms, so there's two aspects of it, as you're aware. One is for the firearm to be collected and destroyed. The other one is for it to be disabled. So we will work with jurisdictions to ensure compliance. We have a November 1st deadline where the Order in Council, we've extended the amnesty for the 2,500 firearms that are subject to the Order in Council, and we will require compliance. So at some point, provinces and territories need to come on board.
Thank you. Walk this way if you don't mind.
The CBSA officer, shouldn't that be a problem for you, sir? If a foreign official defames a CBSA officer, would that be a problem? Should they face repercussions?
Look, I think in principle, issues around Canadian officials of all sorts are public servants who do a tremendous job each and every day, deserve to be treated with respect and dignity. And we know that it happens, they're defamed by a range of actors, including the opposition. As you know, we have individuals who appeared at committee who are getting harassed. So I would say on a principle basis, our officials serve this country, they serve Canadians, and they deserve to be treated with respect, whether it's from within Canada or outside.
Thank you.
Thank you.